I'd like to thank everyone for inviting us to speak. We are a team of interdisciplinary scientists and engineers. Following up on the last presentation, which was mainly focused on policy, we are focused on building things. So this is sort of the hard design portion of the rebuild and resilience of the response to superstorms. And our approach is really to sort of ignore the root causes here a little bit, and those, why are the storms becoming more severe, et cetera, is the purview of other folks. The policy aspects of all of the policy initiatives that need to be taken up, we are allowing others to take a look at. And we're really sort of looking at, okay, the results are that there is a significant amount of damage. How do we rebuild this in a way to create resiliency? So we have a large team that we're working with on this process, and in a minute I'll explain a little bit. I'll regress for a second and talk a little bit about what Rebuild by Design is for any of you who are not familiar with it. Our team is a combination of U.S. planners, architects, and engineers, and planners, architects, engineers from Holland, who the Dutch have had a long history of working with and living with the water, because they are, most of the country is below sea level. So they have a lot of technologies that we can learn from and that we are adapting. So quickly, what is Rebuild by Design? Well, it's a response to an urgent need, and that is to rebuild the communities that were damaged. In this case, this is the response to Hurricane Sandy, but it's also an opportunity to rebuild in a manner that is forward-thinking. And instead of the typical, we're going to rebuild exactly the same thing in the same place over and over again, and it continues to get destroyed, we're looking at the opportunity to rebuild in a manner that allows for resiliency to be built into that which you are rebuilding. So it's a design competition is the bottom line. It bringing together experts from around the world to apply their knowledge and capability to the Sandy affected region. But it's also a paradigm shift. This is not simply rebuilding, as I just stated, the same way that everything has been done, but it's an attempt to look at how would we rebuild in order to make things more resilient, and then develop a set of implementable solutions that are both prototypical and catalytic. In other words, they can represent the type of solutions that can be applied in these situations, but then they can also catalyze this kind of resilient planning and development in other places. So it's to encourage positive change across the broad spectrum and not just the initial application. And this is a brainchild of Secretary Donovan, so we say a thank you at HUD, Housing and Urban Development, as part of the President's Sandy Reconstruction Task Force. The other is the thing that we are hoping people take away from the effort that's being conducted as part of Rebuild by Design. We are essentially responding to a retrospective situation. Sandy and other storms have hit and damaged communities, and we're talking about rebuilding, but we're hoping that the activities and the ideas that are being put forth in Rebuild by Design are also become part of a proactive approach as communities begin to plan for what amounts to sea level rise and increased storm activity. So how did we, our team, embark on this road to resilience? Well, one of the first things that had to be done was to understand what the causes are and what some of the results of the storm damage were. And what we did is we looked at all the different topologies that are involved in a situation where, in a low-lying region where storms occur, and we found that there are a large number of causes for the flooding and the issues that occur from storms, and it differs depending on where within the region you live. So if you're on the barrier beach, you have one set of problems. If you're in the river area, you have another set of problems. And the next thing we attempted to do was to identify a toolkit of solutions that could be applied in pretty much any region, but in particular to focus on the types of problems that we were looking at in terms of Nassau County. And what we were really trying to do is to take those solutions and put them in a continuum situation. In other words, we wanted to look at what the grand solution might be to, in our case, the south coast of Long Island, but recognizing that tomorrow the funding isn't going to be available to implement this grand solution, we are also looking to implement small pieces of that, sort of prototypical examples of real projects that could be conducted in the short term that would, over time, add up to a long-term plan for resilience for the region. So getting back a little bit to how Rebuild by Design began, the original task of the 10 teams that were selected to work on Rebuild by Design was to look at the Sandy-affected region, which was sort of defined as Connecticut to the southern tip of New Jersey. And all of the teams looked at all of the different areas. We toured almost all of the communities that needed to be, that were damaged during the community, to identify what the types of issues that were present and what was the most present issue, what was the highest types of issues that they wanted folks to focus on, and what were sort of longer term issues. Once that, the initial teams pulled together what we'll sort of call their broad spectrum approach to the entire region, HUD and the RBD team then selected a location for each of the 10 teams to work at. Our team was assigned the southern shore of Long Island, specifically Nassau and Suffolk counties. And we were asked to apply the toolkit that we had developed to this region and work with the local, both the county and the local municipal governments, to identify locations where we could apply the various interventions that we were using in these in specific locations. So our project became dubbed Living with the Bay, Resilience of the South Shore of Long Island. And so one of the questions a lot of people have is, well, why the southern coast of Long Island? Why was this selected for the interventions that you are presenting? And one, it's really a fairly simple answer, which is there was a high population density that was impacted. It's a high-risk area that's physically vulnerable, lowlands. There are multiple threat types. In other words, there is storm surge from the ocean side that overran the city of Long Beach, which we've already heard about a little bit. And then there was bay flooding in behind Long Beach that flooded the lowland areas north, which is the southern shore of Long Island, but in behind the barrier island. And there was also river, some amount of flooding in the creeks and streams that flowed down to the bay. So there was multiple types of impacts from the storm. And then it's a high percentage of economically challenged population in this particular area. So our focus area was the northern area of the southern shore of Long Island, Nassau County. And again, this just sort of graphically represents the types of threats that we're dealing with and trying to design for: the threat of storm surge coming from the ocean side, a Category 1 storm surge. And I should also say that part of our work involved a great deal of modeling and utilizing other models that have been created to determine impacts. In this case, we've modeled storm surge from a Category 1 storm, and you can see that the inundation is quite intense. A storm surge from Category 2, again, there's about 500,000 people living in this region. So there's a true need to move very quickly in terms of trying to provide some resiliency for this. A Category 2, just as to give an indication, in Sandy, this is some of the properties that were impacted in Nassau County. You can see that the water line was up to, in some cases, the window line of the second floor of some of these houses. That's an 18-foot storm surge from Sandy, equivalent to about a hurricane Category 2. So when people talk about a sea level rise of 6 feet as an issue, if you add that to an 18-foot storm surge that we're seeing concurrently, you're getting up into 20, 22, 24 feet above sea level in this area that there's potential for storm surge. And so there's a bunch of modeling things I'll go through here quickly in the interest of time, but you sort of get the general idea. The red line is the limit of inundation. So all of this area where Long Beach is and Bay Park and all of these communities that are in here are going to be heavily impacted. Category storm surge 4. If you add sea level rise, you increase the amount of inundation, and you also one of the things that's interesting about Sandy, while we are trying to design for storm surge, Sandy was also a low rainfall event. Had the rainfall, we heard about if Sandy had occurred 1 hour later or 1 hour earlier, et cetera, certain catastrophic things would happen. If the rainfall had been a 2 or 3 or 4 inch rainfall event, then the amount of water coming from the backside to the bay, in this case, would have been significant as well and would have increased the likelihood of flooding. And so when you add the modeling shows that when you add storm surge from the outlets, you really end up with a situation that shows that there's a significant need for intervention. So the concept here is also to be socially responsible in the designs that we're putting together. Instead of just building a dike that is a concrete wall or a berm that has no other uses, we are trying to build for the storm and the norm. We are looking to utilize the structures as public amenities, as visual and nice amenities that the community can have that will add to the value of living in the area. And one of the things that we've done, we've learned a lot about how not to do things from our friends in Louisiana and New Orleans. They built a lot of concrete walls, the Corps of Engineers did, and they broke up a lot of communities. And one of the things that we heard over and over as we did our public outreach for the work that we're doing was that the communities not only wanted to stay in place, but they wanted to stay intact. And so one of the challenges of our design opportunity was to attempt to do this work in a way that allowed the that really added to the community and not detracted from it. So the goal is to make living with the Bay safe, but also emphasize what makes living near the Bay great. And the proposal is to mitigate the damages from the storm surge by providing and applying protective structures from around the world, some of which are highly innovative, and also to manage the stormwater from behind so that we are protecting from the type of situation that could have occurred in Sandy. And then also we are attempting to provide green corridors upland to make more attractive housing available to hopefully reduce the amount of pressure on the lowlands to handle a higher population. As I said, there was a great deal of modeling that was done of what happens and how the water flows in various areas. And the comprehensive framework that has been developed by our team for this particular application is a set of berms along the Long Beach shoreline, an improvement of green infrastructure along the bay area, including the creation of bay islands that will act as protection from storm surge, and what the Dutch call living with the river, or room for the river. In this case, we're calling it room for the creek, which allows the creek to handle better handle stormwater in rain events, so that it doesn't just flush all that water down to the bay and contribute to the inundation. So the smart barrier is the Long Beach solution. The bay enhancements, which are an eco edge, which are marsh islands that we're proposing to construct to mitigate the flow on the up to the shoreline, and also address sediment flow, and also storm surge in terms of storm doors along the bridge. There are a series of bridges current infrastructure that exists, railroad and road bridges, and along those we're proposing to add barriers that will help reduce the amount of flooding, and it will compartmentalize the bay. We are also proposing some drainage structures that will allow drainage from the bay through the barrier island to relieve some of the flooding that occurred in the back bay. One of the things that we found when we studied the situation of Sandy is that the storm surge flooded the bay behind the barrier island, but the water was trapped there for 4 or 5 days. Even during the low tide cycles, the water couldn't get out because of the wind direction and the wind speed. So water was piling up. They ended up having, for nearly a week, they had 6, 8, 10 feet of water in these communities. This is a highly unusual situation. Usually when you have a storm surge like that, it moves through, and by the next low tide, things are beginning to drain out. This was a prolonged situation, so instead of people's and critical infrastructure like power and sewage treatment plants being flooded temporarily, they were flooded for a long period of time, which destroyed a lot of the infrastructure of those critical infrastructure. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly now, because we're going to get, and then one of the other applications here is the Green Corridor is an attempt to utilize existing infrastructure. In this case, it's a major highway, the Sunrise Highway, to both collect and redistribute stormwater in a green manner, but also encourage transportation development around transportation hubs, so that we encourage the development of upland areas and to relieve some of the pressure on some of the lowland areas that have a high population density. So the smart barrier, I'm going to spin through. These are now examples of some of the interventions, and I'm just going to take 1 minute to kind of flip through some of these. On Long Beach, you can just sort of see the inundation here on Long Beach, primarily from the backside. So one of the ideas is to, one of our design interventions is to increase the stormwater retention and distribution of the system that exists there, so that it better reduces the amount of flooding in a faster manner. And we have the opportunity to work with some existing critical infrastructure, city sewage treatment plant and power plants, and sort of redesign this whole area and elevate it in a manner where we're sort of sculpting the land so that it's raised up out of the flood zone, but it also has places within it that have flood storage or water storage. And so there's buildings and structures and dikes and walkways, and then the city would like those then also to become parkland, a lot of the raised areas. So it becomes a multifunctional area, which right now is primarily a sort of just an industrial zone, if you will. All right, and then sort of moving along here. So a lot of the infrastructure, so this just sort of shows a dike being used in concert with drainage structures so that the dike keeps the water out of certain areas, but the drainage structures funnel water away from the areas where flooding occurs. The Eco Edge is really the creation of islands. The former shoreline of the southern area of Long Island was originally wetlands, and a lot of it was filled land. And so a part of this opportunity is to reclaim some of that filled land, return it to natural marshes. The natural marshes act as energy break as well as a reflector against some of the storm surge. And so one of the ideas is to utilize material that's dredged up to create flood storage and create berms and dikes and islands that will be detractors and deflectors of some of the storm surge energy. Creating high land between the structured areas so that in the event of flooding, there is some areas that would normally flood will be protected. Now, one of the things what a lot of folks do now is, and you see this happening right now during the rebuilding from Sandy, is a lot of the buildings are going up on stilts. And that protects that particular building, that house or that structure, from the next storm surge. But during the next storm, the water simply flows underneath that structure and impacts the structures behind it. And so we believe that that's a missed opportunity. If you put that building up on stilts and then fill the area underneath it and sculpt that land so that you create both a berm underneath the structure but also build in flood storage next to it, then you can build up this resilient area along the outer edge of the coastline. And if you do that, you can do that a property at a time and sort of string this together in a string of pearls kind of approach, similar to the Emerald Necklace here in Boston, to create a corridor that provides that resistance. So you start to see these islands that we envision being created on the shoreline there. And on the streams, I'm just going to sort of advance here to, in this case, there's a combination of sluice gates and widening of the river corridor. In a way, this is something that comes from the Dutch, really, in a manner that really creates a green infrastructure opportunity. It's really taking channelized stream beds and allowing them to go back to, or coaxing them to go back to their natural stream course, and in the process adding green infrastructure that allows infiltration, and then applying some of these really interesting Dutch solutions with houses that are either built on stilts over the river. So right now the houses in Long Island are right up to the river. In this case, the river is allowed to go underneath the houses. And so, and they also have floating houses that move up and down on piles, so that if they're sitting on the ground at a time when there is no flooding, but when a flood comes, the house literally floats up. And also permeable pavement, in order to encourage, instead of channelizing flow such that it becomes a catastrophic event as water builds up, the water infiltrates into the ground, and some portion of that water then is recharged to the groundwater and doesn't become part of the flood storage. And there's plenty of opportunity within the specific areas within the southern coastal Long Island that we're looking at, where parking lots and roads can be converted to permeable pavement. And then the green corridor is really just sort of turning this into both using permeable pavement and storm water retention to essentially redirect water so that it no longer goes from the highlands down to the lowlands, but is redirected in other directions and back into the ground for recharge. And that's, I guess we'll hold questions till later.
Yes.
Thank you.